Hello, I'm starting to let people in here a few seconds early and we will get going, right after the top of the hour, but I see people coming in already. I'm going to ask right now, as you early birds get in here, just verify in the chat that you see my slides titled Mental Health Awareness When Life Throws You a Curveball, and that you can hear me, please. Anybody in the chat? Good, thank you, Ashley and David, and thank you all. I appreciate that. All right. I'm going to wait just 30 seconds more just to let people get in. We had a pretty good sign up for this. I'm very excited. This is very exciting for me to do this, a little bit out of my ordinary, some kind of tax topics today. You obviously are here, you see the title. I've been able to do this presentation quite a few times recently, but every time it changes. In fact, today I made some significant changes to it. I did this 3 times last week at different conferences, but every time I'm down in, every time I do this, I learn something new. All right, with that being said, we're a minute after. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to get this started. I want to thank everybody for being here today. I already said the title once, but what we are going to talk about today is mental health awareness. And a caveat to that is when life throws you a curveball, which is going to be a personal experience that I went through that we will tie into this presentation today. Next slide. All right. Who am I? If you've been on my webinars, sorry, you've heard this before. Just a little background of who I am. We put these webinars on through Trimerit, but it's also through the Unique CPA, which is my podcast that I host. I have a great time talking to individuals on that. I am co-founder and partner of Trimerit Specialty Tax. Sorry, before we get to mental health awareness, just a little bit of a background on this. I'm very fortunate that I just get to do these kind of things, talk, write, speak, podcast. Counting today, said I was someone to watch as one of the most influential people in accounting last year. And because of that, I've gotten recognitions like being asked to be on the Intuit Tax Council, which has been a lot of fun. In fact, I'll be out speaking at one of their events next week and really looking forward to that. Trimerit is a specialty tax firm. We support tax preparers. I assume those are most of the people that are on here today are in the accounting industry, or I don't know if you call it industry or profession. I go back and forth. I think either is doable, but I'll try to stick with profession. I'm assuming most of you are in the accounting and tax profession. What we do is we support individuals that are preparing tax returns with different credits and incentives, helping them to help their clients reduce their overall tax. We've had some significant growth over the last 5 years, and we cover the entire country, and we have people spread around the country. I mean, we have offices at this point, or individuals at least, in about 15 to 20 states probably. Because of that growth we've had, we were recently, just last month I think it was, named by Inc. one of the 5,000 fastest growing private companies in the US. That's pretty amazing to me. But that's from the people that we work with, the tax preparers we work with that have the faith in us that we're going to be able to help them help their clients. All right, so what are we doing today? We're not talking tax. This is still available for CPE. So just be aware when we're going through this presentation today, I am going to ask polling questions, just like a normal presentation. You need to stay logged in for 50 minutes to get your CPE. You need to answer 3 of the 4 polling questions, which will pop up. And that certificate will be mailed to the email address that you registered with. So just be aware of that. This is available for CPE. Obviously, it's not tax. I'm assuming that our marketing department knows the type of CPE. I'm guessing practice management type of topic is what we're going to be going through today. All right, so why are we going to talk about mental health awareness? I think it's fairly obvious. I think that we know that there's issues with mental health, but obviously in our profession, we really do have accounting profession. We have a reputation as a high stress profession. We just have this reputation, whether it's founded or not, it's there, and it's partly built on we just have continuous deadlines, whether it's tax deadlines, whether it's accounting deadlines, whether it's, whatever deadline. You can name a month and we have a deadline that we need to meet. We just need to figure out how to make that not a stressful time just because there's a deadline. Every industry has a deadline. We just know ours are the same pretty much every year, deadline after deadline. And so if we can help to figure out the stress, if we can help figure out ways to handle the stress and mental health issues, I think we can put a better reputation out there for our profession and hopefully help reduce these barriers that we're seeing right now. We're seeing barriers to attracting and retaining employees. We're seeing barriers to individuals going into the accounting profession starting at the college level. I've been told that is a fact, that stats support that there are less individuals going into the accounting degrees in school. So partly, I'm sure, is this reputation. So what can we do about it? Some of it's founded, some of it's self-induced. And so let's talk about that today. So when we're talking about that, we're going to talk about stress. We're going to talk about three things for the most part: stress, burnout, and then mental health in general and mental illness as well. We're going to run the gamut of those and kind of talk about that and work it into things we could potentially do. I want us to become more free and feel open to talk about these things. Remove the stigma about talking about mental health, or specifically mental illness. Remove that stigma. Make individuals in our companies feel comfortable discussing this. And I saw a stat recently that there has been an increase in mental health issues, but there also has been an increase in the last couple of years with people feeling more open to talk about this. So I want to keep that moving. I want to keep that going. And then we're going to talk about ways we can minimize the stress, the burnout. And I'm talking about this from personal experience. I'm not an expert. Nothing I say today is based on my medical expertise or knowledge. This is just me talking about real life experiences, in a business and with myself personally. So I just want to put that out there. If there is an issue, I'll have resources at the back of this that you can reach out to. And if anybody's having an issue, I'm unfortunately not. I'm willing to talk to anybody, but I am not an expert. I can relate from a personal experience on things. All right, before we get going, I want to start right away with the poll, and I'm going to try to make this a little interactive today if possible. But I'm going to start with polling question number 1, and I'm going to launch this poll. And I'm asking, why did you join this webinar today? The title just interested you. You're struggling with mentally at work. You have a coworker that's struggling, just other, or you're strictly here for CPE. Which is fine, which is completely fine. Any of these, I'm cool with. I'm just glad that you're here, and I get another opportunity to present. So I appreciate that. We are at 90% of you participated at this point. I'm about to close this poll. So warning, if you have not responded, I'm closing this in 3 seconds, and I'm not counting out the 3. There we go. We're ending the poll. All right, I'm not going to share, but I'll just tell you, 62% said the title interested you, and 28% feel that they're having some struggles at work as well. So that's a fairly decent sized number, but that statistics support that number as well. All right, well, thank you for that. As I'm talking today, you could put in the chat, and I think we're going to go, we can go Q&A, either spot. I'll try to look at both, but if there's something that I say that causes a reaction in you, or you want to make a comment, or you want me to try to address something specifically, again, not an expert, but if you want, as we're going, just put something in the chat, put something in Q&A, and we'll see if that spurs us going any direction at all. So just wanted to throw that out there. First thing we want to talk about is stress. Now, stress, we all deal with stress. Stress is out there constantly in some form or another. We have stress at work. We've had a deadline. Stress kicks in because we know we need to hit this deadline. We hit the deadline, then hopefully that stress subsides. That's okay stress. That's what it's called, acute stress. And when I'm talking about this stuff, realize I'm good at Google. I can search. I can find consensus of what the definition means, which is what I really did with most of the stuff, is just searching what all these different experts around talk about with these different topics. But so this stress, acute stress, a good example, we just did the deadline. Another acute stress would be you're driving your car and an animal runs in front of your car. Stress causes you to step on that brake immediately. That's good stress. You saved an animal, you saved your car, you saved potentially something happening to you as well. That's stress. That's considered stress, but that's acute stress. It goes away, boom, we're back to normal. The problem that we have with stress is that if it's just ongoing, nonstop, we just can't, the last close to 3 years now of nonstop tax season, another deadline, another new tax bill, another client, another bad client that's giving us a hard time. That uncontrolled stress is what's called chronic stress. And if we can't control that stress, and we'll talk about ways where hopefully we can, but if we can't control that stress, that's where it can be harmful to your mental health and your physical health. And so that's just, again, just definitions right now. That's stress from a definition standpoint, at least the way I look at it. Burnout then. Let's go next level now. This is, again, a definition that really, when I look at burnout, pretty much everybody's definition was the same of this. Burnout is syndrome conceptualized from resulting from chronic workplace stress. So it's chronic. That stress, like we just said, keeps going. We can't get rid of it. We're always up against the deadline. We're always finishing at 10 p.m. the day before things are due, or the day things are due. We always then have to go right next at 6 a.m. the next morning to the next project. This is happening. It's happening in this business, in this industry, in this profession. One, because we're understaffed, but we'll talk about that as well. So this chronic stress can then turn into burnout, which is burnout is characterized by 3 different things. Again, pretty constant on this definition. You're feeling a depletion of energy. You're exhausted all the time. You're having this mental distance from your job. You're feeling negative and a cynic about what you're doing related to your job. And really, you're seeing a reduced efficiency in what you're doing. You're not getting things done. You're delaying it. You're ignoring it, things like this. This is where burnout comes in. And I personally dealt with this, when 15 years ago we started Trimerit, but before that I was in public accounting, and I built a practice that was really tax heavy. And it was just, that was there. We were always deadlines, April 15th, fine. Hit it, drop. Couldn't do anything for a while, then come back September 15th. You got to catch up and get these deadlines. And so I was going through this cycle, and that was all self-induced. This is controllable. I did not know what to do at that point in time. There are things that we can do, and most of you are smarter than I was when this was happening to me. But I stayed in tax. I stayed in tax with Trimerit, and I'm loving it. So for me, it worked out well. Public accounting is one of the greatest professions out there, if not the greatest. I get to talk to you all the time and just love it. And so that's, again, that's burnout, uncontrolled stress, not the acute stress that goes away, but chronic stress that just keeps going. That can turn into this burnout. All right. So why is burnout in our profession? We've talked about this a little bit as we've been going, but I think some of the things, and I think some of you will resonate with these things, and I see this all the time. With the podcast, I get to talk to a lot of people in the profession. Just when I'm out at webinars and doing webinars and speaking at conferences and industry events, I talk to people, and we have this innate feeling. For some reason, as professionals in this industry, we have this innate feeling that we really need to help everybody. We have the knowledge. We know what they need. We need to be there to fix it. And us, it has to be us out there. And we think we need to help everybody. That's unfortunately going to put us into the cycle of nonstop, stress and deadlines and all that. But we think that, and everybody I've talked to agrees with me on that. You all may not, but everybody that I've talked to so far has said that as well. The next thing is we get in this mindset that, okay, if we just work harder, if we work longer, we're going to catch up, we're going to get back on top of it. And then the next deadline hits. It's just, you can't just outwork your workload if you're already overloaded. And then I know this is common, but people have this mindset of, you know what, I'm just going to do it because I know it's going to get done right. I know it's going to get done when I want it done. So I'll just do it. We have to delegate. I mean, we have to. There are so many people that could do things in our business. We don't even have to. Everybody in our profession does not have to be a professional. It doesn't have to be a tax preparer. It doesn't have to be an accountant. There are so many people out there we can get just as support roles to get all these other things done and leave the high-end tax work, advisory work, audit work to the CPAs, to the tax preparers. And so those are things that we can control. We can do that. We can delegate that. And we just have to have faith that the people we work with are going to get that done. And they will. They honestly will. Never-ending deadlines. We talked about this. And this is a key one for me. I was talking with Jennifer Wilson, which many of you probably know, last week or two. And I know she has an event coming up in October, which is Fire a Client Day. There are bad clients out there. Maybe they're bad for your business. Maybe they're good for someone else. But just because we have this mindset of we have to help everybody doesn't mean we do. And so there are just bad clients. There's clients that aren't paying you. Well, you shouldn't retain them. It should just be, or they're slow payers. You just shouldn't retain them. You've got enough work, and there's enough work out there right now for everybody that's something that you can do. You might want to go look at the Convergence Coaching. I think I said that right. Jennifer Wilson's business, and look and see what they're promoting. It's in October, like 20th, 21st, this Fire a Client Day. I know it sounds bad, but it's more, you're going to help this client get to the right professional. It's not just, hey, you're done, we're out of here. It's transitioning clients to someone else. These clients that are rude to your staff. One of the biggest things you could do if you have a client that's rude to your staff, if you help that client transition to another preparer, another professional, your staff is going to be just thrilled with that, because now you've got their back. You are there for them, and you're helping them, and you're going to just help retain that employee by themselves. So that people that are getting you information late, these are things that we can control. These things we just sometimes don't want to, because we want to be there for everybody. All right. Burnout. I don't know why this is jumping forward. Okay. So other things, why is burnout a profession? Sometimes, I don't know, this is jumping by itself. I'm in a hotel in Atlanta right now, and it's apparently a haunted hotel because now somebody's pushing these keys and I'm not. All right. So, and that's not stressful to me. I'm fine with that. Why is burnout a profession? A couple of things. Just management sometimes, somebody showing bad, unhealthy work habits. People take pride, and I'm the first one in the office, I'm the last one to lead, I'm working weekends. They're setting unrealistic expectation, and they're contributing to that negative reputation that we may have as a profession. Other professions have it as too. What can we do then? This is not just a bad thing. I mean, it is a bad thing if we go burnout, but we can control this. This is something I was not the best at, 16 years ago, 17 years ago. I feel I am so much better at it now. But just little things we can do, little things. And if you start implementing little practices, and we'll get into some bigger ones, I'm going to start with the little ones. The little ones are just take time out at certain times during the day. So I'm on the road, and as you heard, I'm on the road right now, but I'm on the road a lot. When I'm not on the road, I work at home. When I'm working at home, on my calendar, every day is on there, but on my calendar says 10 a.m., 2 p.m., walk with Kathy. We take 15 minutes, we go out, stop what we're doing, clear our minds, and get back out to outside and just talk about whatever's going on. What's our next trip? What are we doing next? Kathy's my wife, by the way. I assume you probably assume that. And so we do that. And one thing I don't do when I do that right now, and this needs to happen, is I'll take my phone with me. I shouldn't. Leave the phone, forget work for 15 minutes. I know you're thinking, but that's 15 minutes I'm going to lose. That's 15 minutes of billable time. Honestly, if you refresh your mind, you're going to be more efficient in what you're getting done. You're going to get more done in less time. I've got a couple articles out there in Accounting Today, and actually on the Intuit website, that talk about these types of things. I'm not going to go deep into it now, but you do. There's stats out there that show you'll be more productive in this. again, leave your desk. Don't eat at your desk. Go somewhere else. When I'm working at home, obviously I just go to the kitchen, but you're in the office, go in the cafeteria, go in a common area, talk with other people, prioritize exercise, prioritize self-care, reduce your exposure to job stressors. Maybe that's the bad client. That's easy enough. You can get rid of that. Maybe that's, unfortunately, maybe there's a coworker that's just, hard to deal with. That's fine. Just reduce the exposure to that. And this is one, and Mark Reese is on this with me today, and Mark will yell at me because I am still not good at this next one that I'm going to tell you, is don't send emails, text, Teams messages, Slack messages during off hours, during weekend hours. Just don't do it, because even if it clears your mind at that time, you can schedule all these things. You could put a reminder on your phone to do these later. The problem with doing this is all of a sudden that person you sent the message to, and I've seen this happen, and I'm got to get better at this because I've still been doing this, is they want to respond. They see the message and they're going to respond. And I don't want them to, because I don't want them to think they have to work at 7 o'clock at night, or they don't have to work on Sunday afternoon. So just start to schedule those out. Use a planner, use Siri. Siri, remind me to do this. Outlook will actually schedule emails for you, so you can do some of those stuff. And then simple things, just emphasize your outside of work passions. Some of you probably heard, and some of you probably know John Garrett. I love John Garrett. He's written the book, What's Your And? We as a company are having John Garrett come out and talk at our company summit in San Diego this fall. And just stressing and just concentrating on things that you have passions outside of work, I think are important. And we're going to talk about that further in just a second. So simple things we can do. What I'm trying to do is let's reduce the chances that we have burnout in our business, because it's going to hurt us, it's going to hurt our employees, and it's going to hurt our business. More specific things we can do. Every time I do this presentation, and I'm going to take a quick look at the chat before we go here. All right, so nothing for me right now. But so I want to look at a couple things. Every time I do this presentation, I learn something new. Here's things that I learned from people that I've given this presentation to. Focus time. I'm going to say her name wrong, but Courtney DeRondi, I think. She's a managing partner of a firm in Iowa. She talks about this focus time a lot. I'm no expert at it. You all probably have heard about focus time. I think there's a group called Full Focus, which will give you planners to help focus your time. I know people in our businesses are starting to do it now. Block off a time, 2 hours, whatever it is, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. during the day. I'm going to block off. I'm going to make sure everybody knows that I'm not answering phone calls. I'm not answering text. I'm not actually answering team messages. I'm turning everything off during that time, and I'm fully concentrating on the task that I have at hand right now. I may not finish it in that time, but I'm going to spend that entire time. There's studies out there that show if you get distracted from the task that you're working on and go on to another task and then come back to this task, you lose 20 minutes of productivity. If you do that in that 2 hours 4 times, you've already lost so much productivity when you're going back and forth. So have this time where it is a specific project that you're going to work on. Use a planner. Know that these are the 3 priorities that you're going to do today, and have in that planner, and make sure that you prioritize that. You have other things that you can work on. They're not as important. They can be secondary, but just know this is what I want to do today. Your mind's then trained on this is what I have to do. This is what I have to do. And then my focus time is going to be with those things. There's so much information out on focus time. Take a look out there. You can see it, but that's just something simple. And again, in a short presentation, I can't go deep into this. Brian Cush, I don't know if anybody was on the webinar that we presented last week, but Brian Cush did a webinar for us last week. It was, and that's not supposed to be ton, it's supposed to be turn off at the end of the day. And the webinar was, why can't I turn it off? Everybody has this issue. We don't have, I'm assuming, but we don't have boundaries of when is work and when is not work. With technology today, we are always feel like we're going 24/7. 8 o'clock at night. Like I said, I do a Teams message. I have to stop that. But what Brian said in this, and the webinar that he gave is on YouTube, the Trimerit YouTube channel right now. Go take a look at it. I thought Brian did a great job. But what Brian talked about on that was, and I'm summarizing what he says, and I'm not nearly going to do it the justice the way he did. But at the end of each day, whenever work's done, whatever time that is for you, is bookmark your work. You don't have to think about it then all night long. It's like, where was I? What was I doing? Because you know it's there in the morning. You know you have notes there. You know where you're going to be able to start up again. So just do the simple task of bookmarking where you were on projects. Also, and he said this takes training. You have to do this over and over, but come up with an instead plan, meaning instead of work tonight, I'm going to do this. My thoughts are going to be about this. I'm going to go home and I'm going to cook dinner. I'm going home. We're going out to dinner. I'm going to go home and I'm going to vacuum tonight. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to think about this topic. I'm going to think about this family vacation we're going to have. Just train your mind to start having an instead plan. Think them different. Shut your mind off. Work's done for the day. Now this is the non-work time. That's fine. You're not productive work hours anyways. These are just things that come into your mind that you don't need to be thinking about. And then in addition, he says, just have this mental and physical shutdown practice, whatever it is. At the end of the day, I turn off my computer, I shut it. I say I do a little meditation, clear my mind, I'm done. What you come up with your own plan, but just have something you do that trains your brain that this is the end of work today. This is the ritual I go through to show that it's the end of the day. So just turn off at the end of the day. That's key. That can help us mentally for sure. And I'm guessing a lot of us will say, yes, I am constantly looking at my emails, even while I'm at home. I'm constantly looking at my text, even when I'm at home, my Teams messages. So this will do something different. Another thing, and this is a CPA told me this last week when I was doing the presentation, what they're doing, this is a large CPA firm, they're actually bringing in a mental health coach. A mental health coach to train them to identify within themselves and within employees when there may be some mental health issues going on, when there's some burnout going on. And honestly, it's probably not very expensive. And if you can bring them in quarterly or whatever to train somebody, I think that's something we can do as well. So ways that we can avoid burnout. All right, polling question number 2. Let me pop this up. I had to guess where we were going to throw these today, and I think so far I'm landing these pretty well. So do you feel burnout does affect you currently, in the past, not at all, unsure? Burnout's not something to fool around with. And this is a very big thing in our profession. I'm almost certain of it because burnout can then, uncontrolled, potentially lead elsewhere. All right, when you're answering that, I'm just going to check Q&A. All right. So what tips do you have for dealing with workload compression? I think we talked about that a little bit. We'll see if more of that comes out today when we're talking, but just, delegating, just, having that focus time. And somebody says, I love what's your and I do too. And all right, with that being said, I'm going to close this poll and I'll just tell you 57% are feeling like they're currently dealing with some burnout, 30% in the past. So that means 87% of us have felt like we've been dealing with burnout at some time in our careers. That's a big number. That's something we can't ignore. And unfortunately, I've talked to some people that want to ignore it. And I'm not joking around that. I'm just saying there's some people that have asked me to come and talk to their firms about this. And they got, but take it easy on burnout. We don't want people to feel like there's a problem. We can't ignore it. It's out there. You just proved it to me. 87% of us either are currently dealing with burnout or have dealt with burnout sometime in the past. So it's not something we can ignore. I'm going to give us more solutions as we go here, but now let's go a step further. If we don't control burnout, this could turn into mental illness. This has happened. This is a thing. In mental illness, what is mental illness? Well, mental illness is a condition that affects your thinking. It affects your behavior, your mood, your impacts your day-to-day living. This is obviously going to impact your ability to work. Stress and burnout, our potential stress can turn into burnout. Burnout can turn into mental illness, anxiety. And so stress on its own is really not a health condition. It's usually, like we said, triggered by an event, and that event goes away, the stress goes away. Uncontrolled stress then could turn into burnout, and uncontrolled burnout can turn into health problems like anxiety, depression, if it persists over a long period of time. That's something that we have to be very careful about. Mental illness can be work-related, but I think we as people in this profession or in any business have to be able to identify or help see if someone is going through a mental illness issue, and it may not necessarily be work related, but it's still going to affect them, obviously, and it's going to affect us as well. But the person is first in this case. So what are risk factors for mental illness? And I'm going to go deeper into mental illness in a minute. So risk factors are just family history, genetics. If somebody's had, a stress life experiences like abuse, especially in childhood, which is just awful, but chemical imbalances in your brain. I mean, that can create mental illness issues. That can be controlled with medication potentially, but that's there. Injuries, mothers, while the mother's pregnant, some exposure to toxins or viruses. Use of drugs and alcohol can be two things. It could be trying to mask mental illness to keep you feel like that's how you can get rid of it. Unfortunately, that's not a way to get rid of it. It also can create those issues. The feeling of isolation and loneliness, that can create mental health issues or mental illnesses. And then having a serious medical condition, cancer, heart attack, stroke. That's my story that we're going to talk about here in a second. And I want to talk about that because I think we as professionals need to be able to figure out if this is something that is going on with anybody that we're working with. Types of mental illness: depression, anxiety, very common. Both of those two. Saw some stats this morning of people that were polled about what they're currently feeling, and the percentage of depression and anxiety was so high. It was high. Those were the two highest that people felt they were going through. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar, post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, just forms of mental illness. Again, stress, burnout, mental illness, kind of a scale of seriousness on my mind. What signs then? If we see something different in somebody at work, what are signs that somebody is struggling with something serious, whether it's burnout, which is very serious, or even gone further into mental illness? If they're sad, they're down all the time, they're confused, they can't concentrate, excessive fears, extreme feelings of guilt. You've seen this, mood swings, highs and lows. That could be a couple things. I mean, it could be bipolar, could be other things, but that's a sign that someone's struggling mentally. Withdrawal from friends and activities, and then just tiredness, low energy, problem sleeping, all signs that somebody's struggling. And then why are we talking about this? It's not just 1 in a million people that we're dealing with mental illness. 1 in 5 of us will experience some kind of mental illness issue each year. 1 in 20 of us will have a serious mental illness issue each year. 1 in 6 youth will have some issues during the year, and almost half of us at some time in our life will deal with some kind of mental health condition. So it's not hidden in the street corner. It's not someone living in the tent in the downtown area, which unfortunately it probably is that, but it's also potentially the person working next to you. All right, here's my story. This guy's smiling. I don't know why he's smiling. He doesn't know what's happening here right now. But my story is at age 51, 8.5 years ago, I had a stroke. This is not the day of my stroke. This is 4 days later when I had a second stroke. This picture of me is after I've gone through I don't know how many tests. I had just come back from a test there with my hair being crazy. I asked my wife to take this picture. They had electrodes all over my head, checking brain activity. And for some reason, I'm smiling, probably happy to be back in my hospital room, rather than all the prodding and poking and blood they're taking and the tubes I'm going in and exams I'm going on. So my stroke, just as a quick story, my stroke happened. I was fortunate that by the time I got to the hospital, a lot of my signs were resolving or my symptoms. But when it happened, I lost my ability to speak. I lost my ability to use the left side of my body and was completely incoherent, didn't know what was going on. It's a very scary event. By the time I got to the hospital, just numbness on the left side, everything else had pretty much come back. I could speak again, maybe a little bit of an issue with speak, but not bad at all. Went home same day went home from the hospital. 4 days later, had a small stroke, but another stroke. That's what started my issues. That's the picture you're seeing here. That's the 4 days later after I've been through everything. What happened was, for me, and this is talking about events, nonstop, not uncontrollable stress. What happened for me is I would get a feeling in my head. We all get it. We get a little dizzy. There's just a little pang in there. There's something that happens. We don't even pay attention to it for the most part. For me, I was about to have another stroke. When that happened, boom, kick in. I'm going to die. I'm not going to survive this time. I'm going to be disabled. What's my family going to do? And I normally warn you ahead of time when I give this presentation. I'll often tear up. I'm working hard to control that today, but this is what happened to me. And so this is not necessarily work related. It can be. I don't think it was in my case. My case was I had a hole in my heart. They found that hole, but there was probably a clot that formed around that hole. The clot probably went to my head. That's probably what happened. But these uncontrolled, things happen in my head. These thoughts that would happen. They diagnosed me with PTSD. Boom. It would trigger. I'm going to die. That's what just kept going over and over in my head. That turned into depression, not constant. It wasn't constant. I was able to function. And so that's why I'm saying the people you're working with could be going through something like this and you may not even know it, just because I was able to function, but I would have issues. I'd maybe be at a conference. I may even be speaking at that conference. Sometime while I'm there, I don't know why it would happen at conferences, I would just start to go into a panic attack. Luckily, the people I work with knew what was going on. I didn't hide everything. And I say that because there was things I did hide. I mean, I didn't tell everybody how bad it got inside my head, but I would tell people things were going bad inside my head. So just be aware when I said those signs of mental illness, just watch for those things, because on the surface, you may not see everything. Panic attacks would kick in, depression would kick in. I'd have a room in my house where I would just go sit and I would tell my wife, I'm having this melancholy feeling again. The melancholy feeling, looking back, was depression. I just never called it that because I didn't want to think it was depression, but that's what was going on. And so I would tell her I wouldn't keep it a secret. I was keeping some things secret that was going on. What I did, and this didn't happen immediate, this went on for almost a 5-year time frame, 4.5 years, let's say. I went to a counselor. Counselors are great, therapists, whatever. They're great. Went to one. And she's a great person, but her answer was, well, if something happens, you can't control it, so don't worry about it. And I don't think she knew my personality, but I can control it. That's what I do. And that's probably the way a lot of us think. So she was great, but it just didn't work for me. I thought I was controlling it. After that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to teach her. I'm controlling this. I left. I'm better now. I wasn't, the melancholy feeling, depression, came back, saw a second counselor. I honestly don't know what happened in that. I can't even remember the person at all. I just know I went to a second counselor. Obviously that didn't work, but in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm controlling this. We're good. Saw a third counselor. I don't know what mojo, what magic she did. All she did was listen. But when she was listening to me, somehow she was building something into my head to figure out how to attack what was going on. And so mental illness to me was, I wasn't in control of my thoughts. My head was. I know it sounds weird because my head's mine, but it wasn't me. I wasn't hearing voices, but I guess you could kind of say that, but it was just more these thoughts weren't my thoughts. It was like, I don't want to think this. Why am I thinking this? That's what mental illness was. And so somehow with this third counselor, only seeing her a few times, and I'm not saying this is easy because it's not, this wasn't a short-term thing. I was sitting in that melancholy place that I had, and after one of our counseling sessions, and I sat there and I just said to my head, and this is on YouTube, and I'm going with the PG version. I'm not a swearer. This is the G version. I'm not a swearer at all. But what I said to my head was, F you, you're not real. Get out of my head. I'm not listening to you anymore. And that just became my chant. I can remember exactly what I would say. And I'd say that. And I'm like, okay, no, I'm not giving in to what my mind's saying. I'm not giving in to things are hopeless. I'm not giving in to there's no point in there. I'm not giving in to any of those thoughts anymore. That's something she did. I don't know how she did it, but for me, it worked. And so I just want to let you know, this is something that somebody can come out of because I came out of it. And the biggest thing is I didn't hide it. If I would have just hid it, I don't think I would have got to that point. But for me, that's what happened. Now it's 4+ years that I haven't had those thoughts. It wasn't fun. I honestly wouldn't change it because it's made me who I am today. And I get to be in front of you talking about this now. I get to be out speaking at events, and that all changed because of my mindset and because of what I went through. So that's just, I'm telling you a story. What I'm telling you this for is it's not just, people that you think. It's people that are sitting next to you at the office. It's a family member, unfortunately, that's going through something like this. And mine, in my mind, was not at the top of the scale. People will tell me, no, you're wrong, Randy. That is the top of the scale. But for me, I just felt I got through it, and I'm good with that. So the bottom line is there is hope. So this isn't a death sentence. Unfortunately, it is for some people. I mean, you look at stars that you've heard, what is it? Naomi Judd, I think, and the food guy on the Travel Channel, Anthony Bourdain. I mean, you think they've got everything. They've got the world. How can they be like this? It's not them. Their mind is playing tricks on them. And this is unfortunately what happens. So this could be anybody. But there is things you can do. You can go to therapy like I did. Medications can work, support groups, just self-help, peer support, alternative medicines. All these things are out there. When you research mental illness, you can see that some people will say it's treatable, not curable. To me, it's curable. I'm not a doctor. I don't have any fears that I'm going to have any mental issues in my mind at all anymore. Maybe I should be concerned about that, but I'm not. I was for the longest time, and I'm tired of it. And plus, I got a chant to tell my head if anything does happen. All right, polling question number 3. I really tried to get through that better than I normally do. All right, so I'm just curious, does anybody at their workplace have anything in place that they're currently doing to help anybody that may be dealing with mental health issues, whether it's stress, whether it's burnout, to the extreme, whether it's mental illness? I'm just wondering, and normally I'm gonna not skew the data, but normally there's not a lot of companies that I talk to that have something in place. It's just it's just hasn't been all that common. What I do get is that a lot of people are thinking that they need to do this. People are talking about it. People are coming up with to see if there's a program that they can put in place. All right, we're at 93% participated. So I'm going to end this poll, and I'm going to tell you that 68% of you do not have anything in place, and that's nothing against anybody. Like I said, that's probably 14% saying yes, maybe more hands going in the air than I normally get when I ask that question. So good on all of you that at least there's something in place for some of you already. All right, I'm going to run through questions real quick. I'm going to run through this, and then I'm going to go to something else. But I just want to see if let me check the chat real quick. Thanks everybody. Yep. All right. So I'm going to ask questions, and if you have, and I'm not sure how we can do this, but if people want to put some in the chat, and if you're not comfortable, don't. If you want to put something in QA, go ahead. If not, But do you have an idea of why there's a stigma? I think there is, and why there's a stigma about mental illness. We don't have the stigma about someone's got cancer and, oh, we can't talk about it, or someone has a heart attack, we can't, or someone has a stroke, we can't talk about it. We don't have that. But with mental illness, oh, then we're not going to talk about that. We need to. That's extremely important to talk about. So if anybody has any ideas on that, let me know. Have you seen a increase in mental illness issues over the last few years? According to stats, there has been. Obviously, we've had isolation. That is going away now, but it looks like that there has been more going on. I want to see if I'm just curious if you personally have had dealt with this. Have you personally, and this is something that we can deal with offline later too, but if you personally had a coworker who you think has had mental illness issues, what does that look like? Honestly, it's probably not work related. Work may have something to do with it. With me, maybe the conferences did add to it. Maybe that put me in a more stressful situation, and that's why it would often happen there, but it would happen outside of conferences too. My first panic attack, I was sitting with my family at a restaurant eating breakfast in northern Wisconsin, and all of a sudden, uncontrollable, I couldn't do anything. All I could do was just sob uncontrollably, and no idea what was happening. And in my mind, I was having another stroke. So the PTSD and panic attack were intermingling, and it was just not a pleasant experience. I want everybody to think about what we can do to support someone who's struggling. I'll tell you some things we're doing, and we're going to get to this in a second. I just want to throw questions. I want us to start thinking whether we can interact, which I like to do this live because we can interact, or whether we just start thinking. If I can get you thinking about things, that's key. And if you had anybody open up about troubles that they're experiencing, I'm just curious if that has happened at all. We already asked in the polling question if you have anything, but what I want to know is, have they worked? What kind of feedback have you gotten? What kind of resources? I personally would love to know the resources that the 14% of you that have something in place. I really want to know that because I build these into these presentations. So if you can shoot me an email or something after this, I would love that. I'll put my email up at the end. But what can we do? All right. So what can we do to help, whether it's stress, whether it's burnout, or whether it's the extreme of mental illness? What we need to do is we really need to, and again, this is just things we need to do. The answers we're going to work on, but we need to evaluate, and balance employees' workloads. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. We will talk about that. I know that's a Q&A we got from someone, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Empowering them to delegate. Honestly, I think, even though we talk about not being able to hire people, I think we can get people at all different levels. And if we get people that do the work, that get to us as the professional, I think we can do that. Make sure that everybody has a clear idea what their role is. Let's not overload people. Let's work on, if there's bullying or unfair treatment. Don't be afraid of remote work. We've done this from day one for the most part. We do have small offices around the country. I think we have a very good culture. We're going to find out if that's the case with a poll that we're going to do shortly, and I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. But don't treat people working remote different than people working in the office. That just creates this culture that is not good for you. Put mental health self-assessment tools available, make depression screening available, offer health insurance that has, no or low costs out of pocket. Most health insurance has, access to counselors, access to depression medications. Sometimes people don't even realize that. Make sure people realize this. And then even bring in a, coaching, counseling, self-management programs. We can do this. We can show people that we're working with that we want to help. We want to help them have a better life at the office and outside the office. More things. I'm not going to read through all this. You can look at this. You're going to all have access to the slides. What I do want to do is get to a couple things. Be vulnerable. I think that's important. If you have a story to share, and I truncated mine today, but I would say share it. If people show you as a leader, assume you're a leader in your practice, you as a leader are willing to share your personal story, I think that's going to help other people as well. And why do we need to do this? Well, If you look at stats out there right now, and this is a survey that was just recently done, we look internally, and I'm going to talk about what we're doing and why we're doing it in a second. If you talk internally, if you have benefit leaders and you ask them this question, you have employees, you ask them the same question, you get different results. Do you think your current benefits effectively address employees' mental health needs? Most of the benefits leaders say yes. Most of the employees say no. There's a disconnect. We need to do something about that. In addition, do we feel that our company provides a wide range of resources to fully address employees' mental health needs? Employee benefit leaders, 61% say yes. Employees say no. You need to know what you're doing currently. Do your employees agree with what you're saying? So what we're doing is we are on a anonymous survey going to ask questions. Now, I'm just showing you what our temporary questions are. These will get dialed in, but we're going to ask all employees these questions. Do you feel your overall well-being levels at work are, great on a scale of 1 to 5, great or not great? How would you describe your work-life balance? How would you describe your stress level? Do you believe that Tri-Merit currently aids in stress management? We're going to ask all these questions just to get results and see if we are doing what we think we should be doing, or if we're doing what we think what we're doing is what employees really feel like we're doing. More questions. I'm going to leave the list here. You're going to see it when you get the slides. I want to get to a few then things that we can do in addition, but I'm going to put we're right at 50 minutes. So let me put the fourth polling question up there now. This one I didn't space out quite as well as the other one. Do you plan to try and install new habits personally or programs on mental health in your business? Just curious what people are thinking. Again, for things we can do, focus time. Things we can do, delegate. And I know you're going to say we don't have anybody to delegate to. You can. That's a cop out in my mind. Sorry, I apologize, but that can happen. We don't have to be the biggest firm in the world. You could be more profitable by dealing with less clients. It honestly can happen. You can do it. You can have your expertise in this certain industry. You can bill higher rates. You can service less clients, and you could be more profitable by dealing with less clients. That's something we may just have to do in this industry, in this profession. It just may have to happen. And don't discount that. There's no reason we all have to be a top 100 CPA firm. It just doesn't have to be. That is not in the cards for most of us. Be the most profitable. Be the best place to work. Have the best work-life balance. Those things you can do by, in my mind, one of them would be just concentrate on a niche. If you have niche expertise and you're the go-to business, go-to individual, go-to firm for whatever niche that is, whether it's a service, whether it's a specific industry, I think that helps us with profitability as well and workload. All right. That being said, we're at 90%, and I've got this up a minute and a half while I was ranting there. I'm going to end this poll, and I'm very happy to say that 90% of you are going to try to instill newer habits to help alleviate personally or in the business any issues going on. All right, so a couple last things. We talked about things, in general. You're going to have to dig deeper on the how do I do the focus time? How do I shut off at the end of the day? How do I delegate? How do I reduce my client base and be more profitable? Things that you can do to look at, but you can't just ignore whatever it is. I'm stressed, I'm overloaded. You can't ignore it. You're going to have to come up with a solution. I've given you a sum. There's plenty out there. We will do, I have resources that we can direct you to as well. But I want to go through one last thing. Because if you are talking to someone that opens up to you, you don't walk away. You don't, you end the silence. You talk to them. You got to be nice. You got to listen. For me, that was the key thing. If someone's going through a mental health issue, a mental illness issue, you have to listen. You have to be there for them. If they open up to you, that is huge. Someone opens up to you about something that's going on, that means they're looking for help. And so you got to keep that going, listen to it, keep contact with them. Don't ignore it, offer help. And again, I know we're not experts. but just keep that conversation moving. Those are key things. This is from, I think this the Mental Health Association put out these data for one-on-one discussions. Some things that we're doing, we are personally implementing a program that we're going to announce, and I know some of our people that work at Tri-Merit are on here today, but we are going to announce at our company summit in November a mental health program we're going to put in place. Some of the things we're looking at is the counselors, is the employee assistance program that is already in place that'll give you access to counselors. We are going to put more information out on focus time. We are going to, talk about shutting down at the end of the day. We are going to talk about looking at your outside of work passions and making that an important part of your life. Because honestly, if you clear your mind, you're going to be more efficient. You can do the work you're doing now in less time. You just have to do it smartly. And so that's one of the things we have to do. But we're also going to give people access to these. I have some resources that that unfortunately, when we're talking mental illness, one of the things, and we mentioned this before, is suicide. There is a hotline. 988 is a suicide hotline. I put a link to the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline website there. Jennifer Wilson asked me to put this on here. She wrote a blog about facing suicide head on. Unfortunately, she had a personal experience with a friend of hers that went through this. CDC, all these mental health organizations have great information. Amy Vetter, who's a speaker out there, I met her a few months ago. She talks about business, balance, and bliss. I didn't tell Amy I was putting this up here, but hopefully she doesn't mind. Just that whole balance and being more productive when you have a balanced way of looking at things is important. That's my mental health. I'm going to look at the chat and the Q&A. I just want to tell you something right now. If there's any inkling that you're going through anything, reach out to somebody. It helped me. It was tremendous. I am right now living the best life I could possibly live. I wouldn't change anything I went through, but man, it got me to this point where I am right now, and I can't imagine it being any better than it is. So, reach out and talk to somebody, figure out ways that you can do things different. We have a virtual conference coming up that is going to be November 30th, December 1st. It is virtual. This is our second annual. I want to point out the speakers on this. Look at that list down at the bottom. If you want a who's who in their profession, they're on there. I have no idea how all these people say yes to me when I ask them, but if you follow, let's say, Accounting Today's top 100, you look at the top 10, I've got 5 of them, I think, on here. Ron Baker, Kimberly Ellison Taylor, Jennifer Wilson, Randy Johnston, Alan Colton. And then on the top of it, you got Jeremy Clapton, Kristen Rampy, Jim Brandenburg, Rob Zabersky, he's going to talk about training your brain. That's what Rob Zabersky is going to talk about. That's going to be awesome to hear about training your brain for success. And then Michael Gowler and Mitchell Coleman. So this is going to be a great group. It's 12 hours of free CPE. You can pick and choose the sessions. You don't have to go to all 12. It's going to talk about the revolution that's happening in our industry, the evolution of our industry. And so hopefully you can join us for that. We're looking forward to that. That's what I got. I'm going to look at the chat and see if anybody wants to stay on, I'll see if there's anything I can address in the chat and the Q&A. While I'm doing that, there's my contact information. I said, if you have anything that you're currently doing and you can share with me, there's my email address. Please send me that. If I can implement that into here, that'd be great. The one other thing I didn't talk about, and it's not going to address some of the questions there, but it's, if your mind is in a better place, you're going to be more productive. You may not agree with me. You may be one of these people that says, I got to outwork this. I've got to just put more hours in. Honestly, you don't have to. And I'm not an expert, but I know that for a fact. I have another person I talked to today, and he said, non-busy season, I take 3-day weekends. Every weekend's family time. I'm guessing he puts in extra hours the 4 days he's in, but he takes 3-day weekends. He prioritizes his away from work time, and he tells me he shuts down in those 3 days. This is family time and family time only. That's just another thing we can do to help keep our minds right. And so I tell you, I learn something every time I do this. All right. All right. Somebody is saying that they got Amy's book. She has a lot of good points. That's great. Somebody clap for me. Thank you, David. So David Bowman's on here. David is currently the president of an organization called Stroke Survivors Empowering Each Other. I was the president of that organization the last 3 years. That's the organization that helped me post-stroke. David I met him at a tax conference or at a accounting conference, and he graciously agreed to take over that organization after my 3 years was up. So David, thank you for being here, and thank you for what you're doing for stroke survivors and caregivers. Somebody just thanked me. My husband is an incredible tool. My husband is using EMDR. It's an incredible tool for dealing with PTSD. It has to be done by a trained professional. So that's something that somebody's pointing out there. Somebody just said that they forgot a poll. And just all right. Share on YouTube later. Yes, this will be on YouTube. And then there's a couple of Q&As. Let me just check on there. All right, Rob's asking this question a few times. I may have to reach out to Rob direct. I'm not going to have all the answers, but I think I had some answers there. And then third, fourth polling question, should I have a choice and not applicable? I don't remember what the fourth was, but I suppose it should have. All right, I'm going to end everything today. I appreciate everybody being on here. I enjoy talking about this. I enjoy, at a minimum, showing that there are things that we can do. This may be more pointing out there's things we need to do, but I feel that we also continue to share with each other. We will come up with more solutions. This is not something that is just there that we have to deal with. We don't. Thank you, everybody. And I am going to call it a wrap.